Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at a legendary dinosaur. It's the 2018 CollectA Iguanodon. Iguanodon is such a special dinosaur with a ton of history. It was the second dinosaur species ever to be named, along with Megalosaurus and Hylaeosaurus. It was named in 1825 by Gideon Mantell after his wife Marianne discovered some fossil teeth along the roadside. If you believe the story, if you really look into how the teeth were found, it's a very long and confusing story, and there's multiple versions of how the teeth were originally found, but that is a whole different discussion for another day. Iguanodon's name means iguana tooth, and that is because the teeth are very similar to our modern iguanas. This actually isn't a iguanodon tooth. This is a cast of a similar species, Tenontosaurus, but they are roughly about the same shape. Moving on to the model itself. This is from CollectA from their 2018 Deluxe line, and this is one of the best models CollectA has ever made to date. I absolutely love everything about this thing. This thing is just a fantastic piece of work. This model is clearly based on the Iguanodon species Bernissartensis, which is actually one of the largest Iguanodon species. And actually there's been over 24 different Iguanodon species, and the problem was back in the 1800s when we first started learning what dinosaurs were, anything discovered that remotely resembled Iguanodon was just given a new species name. So we had multiple species of Iguanodon named, and now that we have a larger fossil record and more bones and material to go on, paleontologists have gone back and re-examined these fossils and have reclassified a lot of them into totally different species. Now they're not, in fact, Iguanodon. So before we take a closer look at this model, let's do a couple quick measurements. This is actually a very good sized model. It is just over 11 inches long from the tip of the tail to the snout, and just about 4.5 inches tall to the top of the head. And with those measurements, Iguanodon is estimated to be between 33 and 43 feet long. This will put this model somewhere in the 135 to 145 scale range, depending on which length measurement you want to use. I absolutely love the pose of this model. You got this Iguanodon on all fours. The arms of Iguanodon are 75% the length of the legs, which leads scientists to believe that this animal walked around mostly on all fours and could be able to rear up on its hind legs to reach higher foliage, or if it needed to escape a predator, run on its two legs. The pose of this model is very dynamic. You can see on the hands right here, these three claws are splayed, which shows that they are supporting the great weight of this animal. And you got this other hand right here outstretched like the animal is casually strolling along. And then the head is sculpted with the mouth open, which offers different display options. It could either be foraging, it could be calling to a herd member, or it could be bellowing to warn them of an oncoming predator. I love the color scheme that CollectA decided to give this Iguanodon. Usually CollectA is known for giving very bright colorings to most of their dinosaurs, accompanied by their famous war paint. They decided to go with a very natural looking coloration on this Iguanodon. It is done mostly in a nice dark green color, some lighter green between the scales. And on the underside, you have a nice yellow stomach. Very natural looking colors. You got some splotches of brown along the legs and back, and some black highlight markings along the body that continue down the tail. Very nice coloration by CollectA, and it's definitely one of their best paint apps I think they've ever done on any of their models. Absolutely fantastic. Let's pull this guy in and take a closer look at some of the details, starting with that beautiful head sculpt. You can see the eye is done in an orange color with a black pupil. You got the toothless beak with that keratin sheath, very well sculpted. And you got a nice little pink tongue, and you can see the cheeks are very well sculpted on this. Iguanodon only had a single row of teeth on the upper and lower jaws, and that leads them to believe that to keep the food in its mouth while it was chewing it, it would need cheeks. You got a very long and powerful muscular neck right here, a lot of finely sculpted scales, and the texture of this model feels absolutely fantastic in hand. And moving down to those very powerful hands, you can see the classic Iguanodon spike, which I so happen to have a cast of the thumb spike of Iguanodon. And you know, anyone that is remotely familiar with Iguanodon, that back in the day when Gideon Mantell did his first reconstruction, you know, there wasn't a lot of material to go on, that he thought this thumb spike was actually a horn that went on the nose of the animal. And that reconstruction is famously displayed at the Crystal Palace in London with these very large, concrete, very lizard-looking iguanodons. So getting back to the hands, we really don't know what the function of this thumb claw was. Some think it was for defense, some think it was used to help them in foraging for food, or it could have been used for combat among rivals in the herd. And getting back to the fingers right here, these three fingers are very compact in the skeleton, which shows that they were meant to support the great weight of this animal. These three claws right here were very hoof-like in shape. And I actually have a cast of a similar relative to Iguanodon. This is a cast of a Camptosaurus hand, which is from the late Jurassic period. You can see the smaller thumb claw on this one, and these two claws on this hand are very hoof-like in shape. And actually this finger right here would have been a lot longer in Iguanodon and be almost about the same length as this finger right here. And moving on to the rest of the body, you can see all those finely sculpted scales in there. Very, very beautifully done. Going on to the feet, you got some nice long toe claws right here. And as we turn the model down, you can see that classic CollectA cloaca, which really isn't that bad in this model. That is just a nice little cloaca hole. It's not the absolute explosion that we see on some of their other models. And going down to the tail, you can see a lot of nice muscle detail sculpted into this model. The tail is very thick with muscle and actually has a lot of tendons in it to keep the tail straight, to help it with balancing. Actually, when the first real reconstruction of Iguanodon was first built, it was in almost a kangaroo-like position, and the tail actually needed to be broken for it to be in that position. And let's just spin the model around so you can see what it looks like from the front. And that is just a great, great looking model from CollectA. I absolutely just love this thing. And here it is from the other side. So let's move on to some comparisons. I have some other Iguanodon figures from other companies from throughout the years. And first up is the old Invicta Iguanodon. And you can see, we already talked about the old reconstruction with the horn on the nose. When they finally found more complete Iguanodon remains, it was first reconstructed in this kangaroo-like stance. And like I said, the tail would need to be broken for this tail to be in this position in real life. But it's very cool to see our understanding of this animal has changed greatly over the last 100+ years, from what this to what we know the animals look like now, being almost a totally quadrupedal animal. And next up is the old Carnegie collection Iguanodon, which is still a nice looking figure. You can see they sculpted it in a tripod position with the tail touched on the ground. That was very common for the Carnegie figures back in the day. And next up is the Safari LTD Iguanodon, and you can see the Safari one is excellent too. Very similar body shape to the CollectA one, but the CollectA one is a lot bigger, and I do like my dinosaur models to be of good size. This Safari one is still excellent. It's a beautifully sculpted figure. I actually think it won Dinosaur Figure of the Year when it came out. I actually, right off the top of my head, I don't remember what year this particular Iguanodon came out. And here it is with last year's Papo Iguanodon, which is a okay Iguanodon. This is clearly based on the old Disney dinosaur movie. It looks a lot like Aladar, and there is a couple problems with this one. The wrists are pronated, and the only reason I got this one was because this was one of the first Papo models where a herbivore actually had an articulated jaw, and that was one of the main reasons I wanted to get this one. And last but not least, here it is with another CollectA figure that came out the same year as this Iguanodon. This is the 2018 Mantellisaurus. This little figure was actually called an Iguanodon up until a few years ago when paleontologists went back and looked over the bones and determined it was much too small and much more lightly built than this species of Iguanodon, so they erected the new name Mantellisaurus to honor Gideon Mantell. I absolutely do love this figure. I will be doing a review very shortly to look at this figure in more detail, probably sometime this week or next week. And here is a nice group shot of the current 3 best Iguanodons on the market right now. So I just want to play around with the poll option on YouTube. So I'm going to leave a little link up here for you guys to vote. Which one do you think is the best Iguanodon out right now? The 2018 CollectA, the Safari LTD, or the Papo? Final thoughts on this figure. I think it's absolutely amazing. This is one of the best models I think CollectA has ever produced. CollectA has really come into their own the last few years. Each year their models get better and better looking, and I think this is just right at the top of their list of the very best models they have ever made. I highly, highly recommend you pick up this model. It is of a very legendary dinosaur that just started a whole understanding of what these amazing creatures are. You can pick this guy up at Everything Dinosaur or D. Jenkins, depending if you're in the US or outside the US. This model retails for just about $20. I'll leave a link in the description to Everything Dinosaur and D. Jenkins if you want to pick up this amazing Iguanodon. And that will do it for the review, guys. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Each subscription helps out the channel tremendously, and I will greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you guys for the next one.